The new podcast, In the Shadow of Princeton, starts as the matriarch of a prominent Princeton family is found stabbed to death in her locked basement. Investigators look from a serial attacker to her family to Princeton University students. One hot-blooded investigator sees a conspiracy. Is he way off base, or does privilege let you get away with murder? In the Shadow of Princeton is available wherever you get podcasts, or you can binge it ad-free by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed, just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.
All righty, welcome back to another edition of the PA High School Football Report. We are powered by PennLive and the good folks at UPMC. Week 8 of the regular season in the books. Playoffs creeping closer and closer. So is Halloween. Finally got some pumpkins over the weekend with plans on chopping them up, making nice faces, scary for the kids. And alas, I did nothing. I did not get to the pumpkins. Now longtime colleague Dan Sosnick. Dan, how was your weekend?
It was a lot of football. Had worked a Saturday game, got back, watched a thrilling Pitt Cal ACC battle. You got the Big Ten doing Pennsylvania and California, and you got the ACC, the Atlantic Coastal Conference, California Golden Bears, as makes a lot of sense. They love their Atlantic coast in Berkeley, but
yes,
that was a fun one, and then watched more football. There's a lot of football this time of year. A lot of football and getting your Halloween costumes ready, but I don't know what I'm going to be yet. Thinking maybe Chucky or something.
That would be pretty good. You have to come to the office for meetings next week. Maybe next week or whether we got what? Yeah, we're getting closer. So maybe next week, come in your uniform or in your costume. Yeah. That would be good. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to be yet. Probably, the old thing is just go. You just go ghost.
Yep.
That's the old one. You just throw it together in the last minute.
You could be like an evil lumberjack or like a zombie lumberjack or something like that.
Yeah, I could do that. I do have some old axes.
Yeah, of course you have some old axes.
I have some old axes. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, Dan. So what's all right? So here's the target topic of the day. It's obviously it's week 8 is in the book, so it's those impending playoff race going on. There's races for division supremacy going on inside the Mid-Penn Conference and elsewhere, but we're gonna stay hyper local here with the MPC, and we're gonna bolster that sort of landscape with games that really matter over the final 2 weeks of the season for multiple reasons. Like I said, could be division, could be jockeying for that District 3 spot, could be jockeying for a District 3 spot for teams that might be outside the cut line right now. By the way, we should mention. I think everybody knows that we do picks every Thursday online and obviously in the Patriot News. Merlin, who a.k.a. Megan, our producer, rolled us up pretty good and smacked us around this week. She was 15-4, and it was not an easy week. Not an easy week. They were particularly difficult spreads, but 15-4 this week. For El Presidente. She's now tied with yours truly for the lead halfway through the 2024 season. I'm a little troubled by that. Not really sure how to react to that at this point. I did not see that coming. But again, we never question Megan because whatever problem we have, she seems to know the answer on how to fix it. So good for her, 15-4 this week. And we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. But we're exactly at the halfway point. We got 16 weeks in the season. and we're 8 weeks through. So we'll see how the rest goes. All right, Dan. So let's jump in with some of these games that really matter. Let's go back and forth. I think we sort of approach this a little bit differently. Again, some will be, with divisions on the line, and some a little bit more bigger picture stuff with districts coming up. I mean, it's hard to believe the districts are just 2 weeks away. Well, 3 weeks away. And teams in the Whippy, of course, are starting playoffs next week. So it's that time of year. So let's jump in. Let's get your first game on games that really matter here down a stretch run.
All right. Well, I got a sneaky one. It's actually this week, and it's I'm going to go to 6A, and we kind of discussed some stuff before we hopped on here, but just kind of going through it now, even quickly. The Chambersburg Cumberland Valley game is actually a pretty big game because 6A takes 10 teams, and Cumberland Valley right now is at 8. They're in pretty good shape, but Chambersburg and Waynesboro are right behind Hempfield for that 10th and final spot.
Right.
And Hempfield has a game against Cedar Crest, which is a really tough game left. And if they drop that game and either Chambersburg or Waynesboro wins out, there's a chance they could leap in and get to that playoff field. And Chambersburg, I would not pick – I don't think I'm going to pick them to beat Cumberland Valley, especially after that Cumberland Valley win over Harrisburg this past weekend. But if Chambersburg picks up that win over Cumberland Valley, all of a sudden they have a Week 10 game against Central Dauphin. They win that game too. They're 5-5. They've got a shot at making the playoff. Like it would again, I'm not great at the whole power ranking math stuff, but I think if Cedar Crest were to beat Hempfield, 3-5 Hempfield, and Chambersburg finishes the year 5-5, then they might get in there with a win over Cumberland Valley. And then flip side, Cumberland Valley, they can't have. I mean, they've got Chambersburg and Cedar Cliff. They probably need to win at least one of those games to, hold on to that spot, right? So I actually think that Chambersburg matchup might be tougher than it looks on paper for Cumberland Valley, and I'm interested to see how that result shakes up 6A.
Yeah, it's interesting too because last weekend was so important for Chambersburg, and the loss to Altoona really hurts. I mean, and it's just they've got strength of schedule on their side. They're probably mid-pack when it comes to strength of schedule out of the 20 plus teams that are in 6A. And you mentioned them obviously having the matchup with Cumberland Valley coming up. And you're right, though. I mean, if Chambersburg with that SOS, if they would get to 4 and 6, there's an outside chance that they can make it. I'll tell you the rule that you sort of use, Dan, and this is just a general rule. It's not is 0.03. You win against, you get a win. You can fluctuate like 0.03 either way. Now there are situations where your strength of schedule obviously could put you a little above that, but it's very rare when you go 0.04 on a win. Now a loss can actually hurt you almost twice as much, but. So if you just look at the numbers, the actual power ratings, Chambersburg sitting there at like a 0.48, and then the 10th spot, which would be Hempfield right now, is 0.49. So it's very doable. It's actually conceivable that a 4-6 record with that strength of schedule Chambersburg could potentially make it. Now I haven't checked really what Hempfield has left. I think it's 2 winnable games.
It's Cedar Crest, which is going to be a tough matchup for that. That Cedar Crest team's playing pretty well. So I think that Chambersburg and Waynesboro are going to be big Cedar Crest fans this week because the Hempfield has them, and then after that they have Reading, which should be a win for Hempfield. So you kind of, if you're Chambersburg, Chambersburg and Waynesboro, you really need that Cedar Crest win there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting too because Waynesboro's in that same predicament. Now the strength of schedule is a little bit below some of the other teams at the top of them, but they're only sitting there at 11th. They've only got to really progress, I don't know, another .03 or 4 to potentially make it in. So I have my first game that really matters today is their game with Lower Dolphin this week.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I talked a lot about the Falcons a couple weeks ago and how this stretch run could really shape up for them, and a couple of positive outcomes, could really put them inside, obviously in 5A. Right now they're 2 out, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're 13th right now. And obviously they dug themselves a big hole. It was a really big hole, earlier in the season. But really two more wins for them, and I think they probably sneak in. So Waynesboro is this weekend. That's a big one for them. And then they've got Gettysburg to finish the season, which is going to be another winnable game. Gettysburg's been sort of a enigma. Strong 1 week, and they really have not really. I think Gettysburg really, if they just had a tighter defense, I think they'd be a little bit in better shape right now. But obviously they haven't done that. So the good news for Lower Dolphin is their last 2 games are winnable contests. So so they're going to have a chance. So, but obviously it starts this week. They've got to defeat Waynesboro, and obviously Waynesboro needs that W too. So that's a big game this week. Lower Dolphin versus Waynesboro.
All right, my next game, because like you said, we kind of had different definitions for this, and this one's not going to really impact whether these two teams make the playoffs, but I think it's just a big game in terms of where you're at when you go to the playoffs, and that's Shippensburg Mechanicsburg Week 10.
Oh yeah,
we're likely looking at. Mechanicsburg's got a kind of challenging game this week against Hershey that they can't overlook, and Shippensburg against Northern York's not a cakewalk either, but I feel like both teams are favored to get into that game 9-0, and they could very well be playing. It's going to be kind of tough. New Oxford has a pretty big lead on them in terms of the power ratings to get that 1 seed, but the 1 seed's not quite as important as it used to be, as I believe this year the championship games are neutral sites, so it's not like you're getting a home game. And at this point, I don't even know how much Shippensburg wants to play their home games. As much as they love those stadiums, or it rains, it kind of ruins everything. But yeah, that I know you. It's about you worry less about the wins and losses and how you're playing at the end of the year. But I've always thought it's nice to be 10-0 when you head into those playoffs. It kind of gives you a little bit of aura, a little bit of mystique. Gives you a little bit of confidence, that you kind of have that that 10-0 mark on you. And I feel like we're heading to a point where Shippensburg and Mechanics are going to be playing for that. Obviously, they're playing for that division title as well. But it's also just on its head a fascinating matchup between a big play, can score in a 70-yard play, Mechanicsburg offense, versus a pretty traditional Eric Faust Shippensburg team that is just going to grind at you and wear at you until you relent. I feel like that's just what they do, right? They make it they have fun making it not fun for you to play football. They just grind on you and run the ball, run it up the middle. Janai Stadium's been awesome this year. Mark Carruthers, Jaden Hines, they've just run the ball and hit you hard on defense. And it's a real clash of matchups that I think is going to be a lot of fun to watch next Friday, regardless of the record, but then the division title and the undefeated record. And maybe New Oxford looks like they're in good shape to they've got a game against Warwick, which kind of challenging, but they should win that one. So you're probably playing for the 2 seed if you're Shippensburg and Mechanicsburg, but man, that's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, I agree too. And I mean, I've been so impressed with both teams. And like you said, I've always talked about Shippensburg, and I've always used the word ugly. They make you play ugly, and that's their brand of football, and that's exactly what they do. Not that they don't have playmakers, and not that they don't have speed on the edge and things like that, but they just sort of will you out of your comfort zone. And really, they've had only really 2 contests that have been kind of down to the wire all season, and that was Waynesboro in week 3, and then of course they had a tight one with Lower Dolphin, which was a 1-point game for them too. And Mechanicsburg obviously is a little bit different. They're a little bit more wide open, a little bit more flash in the offense, and they've just been turning the screws on everybody.
And their defense is kind of underrated too. I got to see them for the first time this week. That defensive line gets after it. They've got some pass rushers on that offensive line. They move the middle of the trenches too. I think obviously the offense gets a lot of credit because they're putting up 40 a night, but you don't blow out teams just by scoring points. You have to stop the other team too. And the defense I feel like has kind of been overlooked a little bit, but it'll be a fun matchup on that side too.
I agree. Guys like Travis and those guys on defense, and obviously the secondary is really, really good. But yeah, they put that pressure on you in a much different way than Shippensburg does. So you mentioned contrasting styles. That's going to be a great game just to watch because they've done it their way all season long. So it'll be interesting to see if one of those teams can kind of force the other one out of their comfort zone, and I'm not sure they can. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure if that's going to be a shootout. I don't think Shippensburg wants a shootout, but they can play that way too, which is pretty valuable come now. But yeah, I agree with you on the 10-0. I mean that's to me it's all about building steam. Like I always thought, I always thought you're if there is such a thing as a good loss or to me, it's got to come in the first 5 weeks of the season. So you still have time to kind of build that resume up and build that sort of just sort of load up,
that's why Harrisburg's been winning all these district championships, right? Is they're playing their best football as they get to that District 3 playoff.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's exactly right. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that one. But both teams obviously safely in. Both teams are going to be probably top 4 unless something weird happens in that class. So they'll be good to go.
Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed, just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.
These are 2 old Tri-Valley, teammates, roommates, if you will. But I think the Week 10 game, Upper Dauphin at Juniata, holds a lot of weight here. Upper Dauphin should get by Newport this week, even though Newport has played a lot better over the last couple of weeks. Dalton Kratzer's back. Zach Bates has been really, really good. And they've got some things going on in Newport, which is good to see. But the Week 10 clash with the Indians could provide an all-important 2 seed in D3A. We talked about the neutral sites now for championship games, and in Upper Dauphin's case, it's more valuable for Upper Dauphin than Juniata. Juniata is going to whisk off to District 6 and do their thing in 4A out there. But for Upper Dauphin, concerning District 3 here, it just makes things a little bit easier if they can bump up, get 2 wins down the stretch, and may possibly bump up to the 2 spot in 2A. It just makes things easier when you play at home that first week, And I think that would really, really be valuable for Upper Dauphin because, as we know, in 2A, this is there for the taking. It's going to be 4 teams. They're all going to be contenders for this thing. And then you're gonna get the championship on a neutral site. But I just think setting up for a team like Lancaster Catholic or even a rematch with Camp Hill, having that at home is just another nugget that's easier to deal with. And I think to do that, Upper Dauphin's got to go 2-0 the last 2 weeks, and that means winning at Juniata, which is not going to be an easy task. So that to me is a really big game in Week 10.
Yeah, for sure. And then like you look at Steel High sitting at that top seed right now, but
Yep,
and I've been really impressed with the job Andrew Irby's done with such a young
I
group
agree
with
completely. Yes. Yep.
so much turnover there. But I don't think it's obviously not the same Steel High program that you look at and pencil in a loss because it's Steel High, right? They're
Right.
definitely a team that a team like Upper Dauphins not going to go in and be like, well, we lost. We're playing Steel High. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that 2A bracket shapes up. I'm going to move up a classification and I'm going to go to 3A. And I'm going to look at the Big Spring Bulldogs, who have been playing until last week, where they kind of ran into, a matchup where they were a little outgunned in Susquehanna
Yeah.
Township.
Not a good matchup. Hannah's offense against that defense was not a good matchup.
No. But before that, they had won 3 straight games, 2 of them that I thought were pretty impressive. I think that Greencastle Antrim team is really feisty.
Yep.
And then the West Perry win, we saw how West Perry probably, if you flip a coin 20 times, they win that Trinity game 10 times. So that's a good win as well. And just bouncing back from an 0-4 start and not giving up on the season and being in a place now where they're 7th in 3A, right behind Berks Catholic. I think they've got a shot at it's not going to be easy, but they have 2 winnable games left on their schedule against solid opponents in Middletown and East Pennsboro. I think they can win both those games. I think that East Pennsboro game is going to be really tough, and Middletown has proven that they're going to be a difficult matchup for everyone. But they're going to have the most dynamic player on the field probably in both of those games. You could argue Aaron Angelo. Middletown's got some guys, but Grant Hall is pretty much been the offense for Big Spring, and if he has just a typical Grant Hall performance in both these games, and they win both these games, they end up at that 5-5 mark. You never know. You can only control what you can control if you're the Bulldogs, right?
Right.
But if you end up at 5-5, there is a shot that something happens with Berks Catholic. They've got a Hamburg and Anvil Cleona, 2 games that they probably should win, but I wouldn't say they're locks to win them. Just the Hamburg's a 5-3 team in a class above, and I haven't seen a ton of Berks Catholic this year. But if you're Big Spring, the message has to be we're playing for a playoff spot, and that would be a pretty impressive feat. Whenever you start 0-4 and get to the playoffs, that's always impressive. So big 2 games ahead. And I guess when you're in that spot, it's not a big 2 games ahead. It's a big next game ahead because you're really just focused on that, getting that 1 win, keeping things going, because you can't really look ahead to that Week 10 matchup.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because if you look at the strength of schedule, Big Spring is by far have the toughest schedule in that entire class by a wide margin. So if you were able to get to 5-5 with that SOS, you're going to be in because I don't think Littlestown can go 2-0. I think Bermudian Springs is the toast there, and they still have to play Bermudian Springs, which is mowing cats down at this point. So I think 6-4. I think a 5-5 Big Spring gets in over a 6-4 Littlestown. I think the math works where that is likely to happen. So, but again, you got to go 2-0, and it's for Big Spring. And to have that shot, 4-6 might do it in a classification like 6A. It won't do it in a classification like 3. So it'll be interesting, yeah. But yeah, they're in position though. I mean, they're in position with a shot, and that's key at this point. For teams that are, I don't want to say struggling, but just sort of to find that consistency and maybe pop a team they shouldn't beat. They're still in a position here to have a shot to make the playoffs. So that's huge for them. It absolutely is. So right now, Dan, I'm going to go, right now, if you're looking at 3A, Trinity and Bermudian Springs are about as close as it gets for the top spot in that class. I mean, the Eagles are going to be heavy favorites over Hanover. They're going to be favorites over Littlestown down the stretch. So the Shamrocks obviously need to keep winning at all costs. If you look at strength of schedule, it's about the same. Although Trinity should get a little bit of boost here down the stretch with you got Hannah at 7-1. You've got upstart Middletown still left to go. Two tough games. So you can't take anything for granted. But this is a winnable class. If you're the Trinity Shamrocks, there's some tough teams there. But, Trinity's been proving themselves all year long. I don't think any of us thought 7-1 was a possibility for Trinity at this point. I know I didn't. And now you've got a matchup here with Susquehanna Township coming up Friday night, which is really for the shot to be a 1 seed. This one has to happen for them. It's more important for Trinity than it is for Hannah. I mean, Hannah's okay, locked in, but again, we talk about that steam, rolling in the playoffs, so that's important for Hannah too, who are still actually in a fight for the division. So it'll be. I think Friday night's game at Trinity at Cobo is going to be is going to tell us a lot of what we need to know heading into Week 10. So that's a big one for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, where a lot of these teams that you're just really impressed with how they've gotten to where they are, and Trinity's definitely one of those teams. 7-1, I don't think. I think we might have guessed any other number combination of numbers besides that going into the year. So just a really impressive job by Kevin Yarnovich and his staff. I'm going back to 6A again, and this is not really any sort of playoff consideration. It's more just whoever wins this game is going to be feeling really good about themselves, and whoever loses this game is going to be feeling pretty kind of, I don't know, I want to say down the dumps, but it'll be hard to bounce back from. And that's Harrisburg CD East, Week 10.
Yep.
I was at the Harrisburg Cumberland Valley game, and that was, that's a game that Harrisburg probably should win. I think they had 30 more plays. They lost the game because every single time they turned the ball over at a bad punt, Cumberland Valley scored. And Harrisburg couldn't convert. And, when you're converting off those turnovers, it's basically ensuring a 0-point drive, and then you're turning a 0-point drive for them into points for you. And it's just hard to make up that difference over the course of 48 minutes. I think that's a loss that Harrisburg traditionally under Cal Everett has bounced back from with aplomb. They're very good at kind of turning the page on disappointing losses like that. But it's also a loss that, for lesser programs could kind of be a teetering loss, right? Where it's like, we lost to a sub 500 or maybe they were 500, but around a 500 football team at home when we were 7-1. I think that CD East game, not overlooking the Central Dauphin game this week, because Central Dauphin has been playing a lot better the last few weeks. But that CD East Week 10 game is going to be a big get-right game for them, and a get-right game for CD East, especially with CD East coming off a McDevitt game that I think, again, I don't know what the line's going to be, but I imagine Bishop McDevitt will be favored in that game, which if Central Dauphin East loses that game, there'll be a two-game losing streak going in that Week 10 matchup after starting the year undefeated. So I think both teams are going to be really looking for that Week 10 matchup to get that win and go into the playoffs, firing on all cylinders. So, I think it's going to be a great game. I think they match up in really interesting ways. I think that Harrisburg defense was pretty good against Cumberland Valley. It was just they were playing in short fields. And CD's offense has been pretty great until the last couple of weeks. So looking forward to that matchup. And I think it will be big. I think it will be really big in the 6A landscape as a whole.
Yeah, I'm sure Bishop McDevitt is looking very, very closely at the tape of the State College CD East game and how sort of State College attacked East and just really stretched them out. They use the middle of the field, which is not a traditional strength of a McDevitt offense, to be honest with you. But just mixed, I mean, just so effectively mixed the pass and the run. And, but I will say this. I mean, I talk a lot about quarterback Eddie Corkery at State College. Obviously, Ty Salazar is an all-state kid. Cooper Brushwood is an experienced guy. They've got really good guys up front blocking. Those guys are really, really efficient. I mean, and just they do things with precision. And for a long time, well, for the first 7 weeks, East has been able to stick to their game plan, play reckless because that's when they're most effective or have been most effective. And it just sort of State College just sort of used that aggression against them and with kick out blocks and things like that. So I know CD's probably feels obviously a little exposed right now. It's still a very talented football team and a dangerous football team. I know Coach Dean, I saw him in week 4 in the post-game huddle, and he was talking about, hey, people say, oh, we haven't played anybody. We haven't done this and that. I don't care. 7-0 as a 6A school in Mid-Penn is 7-0. And there's a lot of talent on that East team. And it just got sideways quick against SC. So very capable of bouncing back. But I agree. I think that matchup in week 10 is really, really intriguing because there's going to be a lot of athletic, guys on the field at the same time. And both definitely want to go into the postseason with a full head of steam. So that'll be an interesting one for sure. My last one, Dan, this is more of just sort of a nugget than anything else. It's not really because I think they know what they have to do. Could you have imagined? I mean, a month ago, Milton Hershey being in the playoff hunt. I mean, was that even remotely on your radar? But there they are. Spartans are sitting number 11. They're just outside the cut line in 4A. Obviously, having West Perry and Susquehanna Township left, that's no easy picnic. But it's really two teams though they kind of match up okay with. I mean, I think West Perry's maybe a little stronger up front. So that could be a problem. And obviously we know what Susquehanna Township can do and what their offense is capable of. But if the Spartans can manage 1-1 down the stretch, it's yes, some things have to happen in front of them, but they suddenly have a shot. I mean, that to me is incredible because I wrote off the Spartans a month ago. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but that's what I did.
Well, I mean, they have had this jolt of energy provided by new quarterback Logan Jerry, who is a sophomore who all of a sudden is just rushing for like 150 yards and 6 touchdowns every game now. They had Elijah Hopkins playing quarterback, who's a solid player. He's been playing running back the previous couple of years. I believe this Logan Jerry was he came from Philadelphia. So he's new to Milton Hershey, but he has been so impressive since taking over that job. And I mean, it really just changes the dynamic there because they've got some weapons. They got Kadingun Luckett, Lex Morales Monzone. I mean, they've just kind of stuck with it, which is which is kind of the theme for a lot of these teams we're talking about, that when you're in these kind of late season battles, a lot of times it's a battle between teams clinging for life and teams that are surging, trying to knock you off that precipice, right? So, Milton Hershey lost so much talent from last year. They lost Jason Burney. They did. They lost Muhammad Karoma. They lost Angel Roberts. They lost Michael Blitty. They lost so much. So for them to be in this position is really impressive.
I mean, it's interesting because, like, you look at their, obviously starting the season, losing to your rival in the Cocoa Bean Bowl, being shut out in that. It was 28-0 in week 1. But, their wins are pretty impressive. I mean, Middletown, Big Spring, and Greencastle Antrim, and then Boiling Springs, which we know is struggling and rebuilding. But there's 3 impressive wins there, in that sort of general classification, that division. But I mean, obviously they did not expect to lose to Newport, and I think that's when it was just sort of like, okay, we get it, and all of a sudden you got 2 straight wins, and you're knocking at the door. I mean, that's I guess that's the beauty of the power ratings. But yeah, I mean, I've just been very impressed with them the last couple of weeks, bouncing back from the loss to Newport. I wasn't quite sure that is something they were capable of, to be honest with you. Again, obviously going to taking on Greencastle Antrim, which you mentioned is another one of those teams to kind of make you play a little bit ugly. And then a good win there by 1. And then, and then obviously taking care of Bowling Springs last week. But, it's not too far of a stretch to say if they could somehow win both games, which is difficult. I would say best case is probably 1-1, but they may have a shot to pull in, the rear end of that classification and make the playoffs, which I think would be one of the most impressive things of the season, to be honest with you.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right, so there you have it. Big games to watch over the next couple of weeks inside the MPC. Always a lot of storylines going on there. We'll have updated power rankings on the website, and obviously our picks and predictions. You can follow Merlin, aka Megan, Heaton, our producer, who apparently is on a hot streak right now, and just got back from, I don't know where is she? She's jet setting all over the world. Where was she this week? Was it Arkansas? Yeah, Arkansas this week, London next week, week after. I think she's going to Egypt. She's all over the place for us, but she makes time for this podcast, and we appreciate that. So that'll do it for this week on the PA High School Football Report. Obviously, check Penn Live all week long for features and previews and picks and all those good nuggets heading into week 9 of the high school football season. And don't forget to get out there, watch some football, and come back next week.
Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed, just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.